So I think what he's saying is that they're extensively telling a story through images.
It's for us film twats.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't say you guys were twats because you guys weren't like up your own asses about it. Like, I'm just saying, like, you know, I think people might pretend to like this movie when they don't actually seem deep.
So, John, should we make our spinoff show called Film Twats?
How boorish.
How boorish.
Okay, you guys weren't twats until just this minute.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh, my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Lane Wooscroft.
What? No news? Oh, no news is good news. Hey, Walter Cronkite, what's the news? Oh, what's that? The Kennedys are dead. Oh, my. Well, maybe I should have asked my own opinion. Oh, and then, you know, it's almost as dead as this bit.
Oh, my.
Oh, shit.
We're 14 seconds in, and he's already made a Robin Williams is dead joke,
we
folks.
broke John.
Buckle
No, I said
up.
as dead as this bit. No, I didn't
You
say
said,
anything about
guess who's as dead as this bit.
Oh.
I thought you meant him.
No, I said this is getting as dead as this bit. Like
Oh.
about the Kennedys.
You got to be careful with that.
My bad. I didn't know.
Because just like our last episode, this person's dead.
Yes, we seem to be hitting the dead like Deadpool here in
Deadpool
our
again.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're on episode 111. This is another entry into our Is This Really That Awful? Series of movies. And this one is going to be a review of the 1992 Barry Levinson film Toys, starring Robin Williams, Joan Cusack, LL Cool J, and
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx.
Oh, and Dumbledore.
yes,
Michael
Dumbledore's in this.
Gambon.
We
is
have
in
to
this
talk
movie.
about that so much because it really messed me up, y'all.
Well, 3 through 8, Dumbledore. Let's be fair.
Yes, let's be fair here. Yeah, no news bit on this one. We're just diving headfirst into this.
We have a lot to go through. Let's do it.
Well, as I said, no news is good news.
But yeah. So usually we're all pretty much in agreement on these kind of things, and you know, I always thought it might be interesting if somebody had, you know, differing opinions. I think this one's going to be good, guys, because Brian, I think you love this movie.
I do.
I watched it again recently, obviously, for the show. I'm kind of in the middle. In Lane, is it fair to say you fucking hate this movie?
Fucking hate is like strong. That's strong to say. So like, it's not that simple, but it's also fair to say I will not be watching it again.
Oh, that's...
So, is it really that awful? We're going to have a lot of differing opinions
It's pretty
here,
exciting,
yeah.
guys. I like when we don't agree. It's more interesting.
You want to start us off, John?
I was going to say, like, you know, it's good, you know, context is king here, to steal a line from old Eric Bischoff. And we need to know...
Wrestling
Reference.
For the reference for the
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, I don't think I had one in the last one.
Last one we did, it was Rock.
Oh, yeah, with The Rock.
Yeah.
We mentioned him constantly.
You literally
Yes.
did like a rock bit.
Oh, that's right. I
did.
did a Rock promo. Well, guys, that was 2 weeks ago.
It was.
It was.
So this is 1992, and the films that were coming out around this, like, just as a point of reference, Robin Williams himself had a movie that had come out a month earlier.
Yeah.
Aladdin had
Yeah,
just hit.
that's
Now
true.
it's just his voice, but let's face it. What do you remember from Aladdin? The genie.
Yeah, I mean,
You remember
Genie's
Robin
the most
Williams
memorable part.
going crazy and just riffing on whatever the
Losing
hell he
his
wanted.
GD mind,
But
if you will.
This movie came out December 15th, 1992. Right around that, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Home Alone 2, A Few Good Men, and another Christmas movie, A Muppet Christmas Carol, came out. And Steve Martin's Leap of Faith, before we realized just how shitty Steve Martin is at being sentimental.
Yeah.
We still were buying into his crap.
Okay.
It came out the same week. Sorry, Steve.
Wow, yeah, because this came out in December. That
Yeah.
was one of the first questions I had because of the opening scene. It's very nutcrackery, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that with everything around it, you know, it's like, I don't know. Like, the trailer seemed kind of weird about this Toys movie. I like that first Home Alone movie. Oh, and the Godfather guy's making the Dracula movie. And, oh, my kids would rather see the Muppets You know,
Right.
I gotta wonder right off the bat, did this movie just get swarmed by everything around it?
It might have, because I mean, it didn't make a lot of money, right?
No.
No.
It made about half the money back, and I'm not even counting the promotional.
It made about
budget.
$23.3 million.
On, like, I think it was a $52 million
$50
budget.
$50 million budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And most of that just went to all the film stock they had to burn from Robin just riffing randomly.
Oh my God. They let Robin be Robin. Bless him.
But, yeah, so I'm going to just give the briefest of backgrounds of this. Now, a eccentric toy maker.
I think that's a safe word.
Fair.
Is passing away.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to leave the company to his son, who he doesn't think is quite ready yet.
Because he's like eccentric to the nth degree.
He's like a weird man baby
Man
who's
child.
also capable of extremely adult jokes and references and
Right.
apparently gratuitous sex later in the movie. But where even
It's true, it happens.
where even the robot drones are like humping the ground.
It's true.
But so he leaves it to his brother, who, by the way, the owner of this toy factory is American, but his brother is English, or at least in the movie they tried to pass it off as, oh, you were stationed, you know, his father was stationed over in England, and that's why he has an English accent.
Yeah.
Why do you hire Michael Gambon if you have to write your way out of his accent?
Because you get Michael Gambon.
I guess.
It's true.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
And I
This is
mean-
guys, this is Barry Levinson off of Diner, Rain Man. Bugsy was his last movie before this. You don't have to like, oh, well, we have to get Michael Gambon. Like, oh, because it's him or nobody. Barry Levinson could have had anybody he wanted.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get a guy with a thick English accent and then write it off as, oh, the toy maker's brother was in the military and was off in England, and that explains.
I mean, it's not a horrible explanation. Like, I did have a cousin who lived in Europe for a while, and she lived, I think, in London, I think it was, for 7 years, and she came back and she had the accent. I mean, she was kind of a tool, but some people are just like susceptible to the accent, you know?
kind of a tool. But he also can't leave it to his daughter because she's just batshit fucking Looney Tunes.
yes,
You know?
and she has a secret
Yeah.
that we don't know about yet.
She is like a bunch of like gerbils with brain injuries and a sack covered in urine thrown into a pool with
But
bricks.
she's hilarious. She's hilarious.
We'll get to Joan. We'll get to Joan. But eventually,
Alsatia, right? Is that her name?
Alsatia, yeah.
and obviously the Colonel does when he inherits his toy factory, he does not like all the happy-go-lucky, you know, nonsense and tomfoolery into making these toys. It's like Willy Wonka but with toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
He decides, like, first he just hates it, and he just wants to figure out, like, how there are leaks and why, you know, the place is being run how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he gets the genius idea of making war toys.
Yes, because
but
he wants to try to sell it to the military.
Right, yeah, so not literal, like, war toys, like plastic tanks and stuff, but toys that are going to be used in war, like through simulations. He wants to make drones.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
basically.
exactly the point.
It's crazy that we have the thing
Yeah.
now that he wanted to make. It's so dark to me almost.
And eventually, you know, Robin starts to learn this, and he has to like step up and challenge him because he's been making these war toys in secret while Robin and the rest of the gang are
the
making
whole
simpler
thing
toys.
is that the military doesn't like his plan. They think he's losing his shit, and he is losing his shit. The general, and he decides that instead of selling it to the military, he's going to train kids to operate these war toys. It's basically like little soldiers.
Yeah.
As
You
like
know,
indentured servitude.
No, just kind of as like mercenaries.
Oh.
So I think, as we like to do quite often, is when we do these episodes, is a segment I like to call, but seriously, let's be fair. And let's talk about what doesn't work in this film and why maybe some people don't like these movies. I'll start because I have a list.
Oh, God.
You do.
There is no sense of reality or the real world. You know, it's out there, but these are just like crazy people in bizarre, like MC Escher-esque paintings that they live in.
To fight you on that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the beautiful parts about this film.
Okay.
Is that it's
I like
not grounded in the real. I don't think you have to have it grounded in the real. If you think about it, it fits in with the the style that they're going for. Like, you look at the fucking poster of this movie, and it's Robin Williams in a red bowler hat that's basically a mirror of a mirror and a mirror
of his face. Could you imagine the nightmare of that many little Robins running around just riffing on cocaine?
So it's already absurd.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to make it real. If you think about it, the general's character is that real element walking into this M.C. Escher world, and the general trying to conflict with that bizarro reality, and how that bizarro reality sort of kind of warps his mind into this monstrosity where he's using war toys, complete bastardization of this world for his own benefit.
But he's so bizarre too, and his son, which, hey, look, I know this is 2018, but his son is a black guy?
Yeah.
And, I mean, that seems almost kind of strange for a 90s movie. Like, I know that, today you probably wouldn't even question it, but the fact that they just kind of, this toy owner has an English brother who has a black son.
What I don't like about it is that the son is also American, by the way. But what I don't like about it is that I feel like they almost played the skin color for some kind of visual surrealism. Yeah. Like, this is a weird, wacky world, and look, his son's black, and we're not even going to explain it.
I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
I don't think now it would have been, but I think for a movie in 1992, I do think that every visual aspect of this movie counted, and it was very carefully thought out.
Did they say that if he was adopted or anything like that?
No, they never said anything about it, and that's why I think it was played for its visual contrast, which I wouldn't have thought twice about it now, because that's just how casting is now. We've managed to do better, but I think it was played for effect, and I didn't like that.
Well, Brian, to my point, that like Michael Gambon and LL Cool J, who are supposed to be people from the real world, or supposed to be to some level grounded, they're almost as cartoonish as the people that live inside this world. Like, I use an example of like South Park. Like, everybody in town is an idiot except Stan and Kyle, right? Because they're the ones that ground it in
to reality.
The morality and the logic, and then everybody else around them is stupid. Or another movie that came out around the same time, like The Addams Family. The Addams Family are weird fucking people. They're goddamn Butler Lurch looks like Frankenstein. They electrocute each other. They're goddamn weird-ass people. They have an aunt who's just hair. But they go out in the real world, and everybody who's quote-unquote normal people, while stuffy, are like, holy shit, what the fuck is with these people?
Right.
And it gets grounded in some semblance that, okay, the real world is still here.
Or a tether.
But, and then they're crazy. But I don't think we get that in toys.
I still say that I think that the general is that anchor.
Especially with LL Cool J, because honestly, him popping out of the camo shit was pretty much the only thing that kept me from falling asleep during this movie. It was the best part of this movie. But Brian, to your point, what does that say about the movie when your only anchor to reality is the villain?
He doesn't come off as the villain initially. He comes off as kind of like the absentee landlord. He doesn't want to do it.
I thought he was so mustache twirly and over the top. And
that was towards the middle and end of it.
But even in the beginning, I thought it was overplayed. I had a really hard time with not Dumbledore, being in this military outfit.
That's not fair.
Well, because he didn't, he's obviously so much older now, and he looks way different as Dumbledore, because obviously he didn't have the beard or anything. But that voice, you can't fake that. I was just waiting for him to start telling Hagrid what to do.
Typecasting.
It's typecasting, the future.
Lane, if you had to deal with Robin Williams that much, you would go crazy too. Speaking of which, goes to my number 2 point. There was just too much Robin being Robin in this.
There was a lot of Robin.
To be fair, he had paid his dues by that time.
Well, I'm not saying he didn't, but there's a point at which where you have to take control of your project and not let your actors run amok. And I feel like that it hurt the narrative to let Robin just kind of do his own thing. Robin Williams, he's hilarious, and I'm still really sad that he's gone. I don't necessarily have a problem with it if it's a stand-up routine, but when you're in someone else's art, their craft, you're taking away from the piece.
Exactly. I love Robin Williams stand-up, and I actually prefer serious, disturbing, drama and psychotic Robin.
You mean 1 Hour Photo Robin?
Like Fisher King.
I love 1 Hour Photo Robin.
Yeah, 1 Hour Photo, Insomnia, Fisher King, Awakenings, like that Robin Williams. Although I hate Dead Poet Society. But anyways, but in these movies, he just takes over. And in the trivia that I looked up for this, like Barry Levinson apparently just like let the cameras rolling and just like let him be Robin. But it's so distracting because it is just a coked out maniac who's great at improv, just going nuts. And it doesn't even sometimes feel like it's his character in it. An even more egregious example is in Mrs. Doubtfire when he's at the temp agency.
Oh, yeah.
And they even switch the camera just so he can just go and do 25 bits. And they even like do that snap cutting because it's like they have to just get through all of his routines. And I'm like, okay, and this is a Robin Williams stand-up routine now. And there were times where I felt like I was watching a Robin Williams stand-up routine and not him as a character, which is sad because when he is the character, he's fantastic.
Absolutely. He just needs to be pulled back a little.
Well, that's a directing thing. I think more than likely it's probably that Barry Levinson was probably intimidated by Robin Williams.
Well, too, I mean, this was a passion project for him, and like I think it's really hard in those situations to kill your darlings. It probably was awesome being on set like that, and like being able to just work with Robin Williams and have him do his thing. But you have to have a more critical eye than that.
Guys, this took him 10 years to make. This is the first movie he wanted to make. And then he had to make all these really, really good movies, like The Natural, in order to make this.
Yeah, it's weird.
And nothing really pays off in the movie. That kind of bothers me. Like, you get all these introductions to things like, oh, here's my smoking jacket or my jacket that makes noise, and like these things don't come back in any way. So they're superfluous. To
I don't think you need to have them come back.
Well, I mean, not anything specifically, but there's also no setup in the beginning. This film is very structureless, which, isn't always a bad thing. But, there's nothing that's introduced that we see later. There's nothing in the ending that makes it feel like we've come full circle. A lot of times when a movie is structureless, we need to have like that emotional catharsis of like something that is dangling in the beginning, that gets caught up at the end.
I think you do have a little bit of that. I think because of the fact that they introduce the old toys in the beginning of the movie. Okay, so like before the general takes over, obviously Zevo Toys has been making these old-fashioned type toys that maybe you saw in like the 1950s and 60s even. Okay, and the climax of the entire movie is that kind of like toy battle scene where the war toys are trying to kill Leslie and Patrick and who else am I missing here? Alsacia and Gwen. They're trying to kill all those people. Mainly because of the fact that the general views them as a threat to his mustache twirling ends. And I'll say that, in the middle of the end of this, he definitely becomes that mustache twirling villain, and it's kind of ridiculous.
He makes a baby doll that has a machine gun.
I think that's awesome. But the point is that you're introduced to these kind of old-fashioned toys at the beginning of the movie that end up becoming kind of the savior because they are that distraction that allows them to escape, and that's sort of the thing. I see that as the payoff, where it's the older type of toys versus the now newer, more high-tech, murder toys. So I see that as kind of that payoff. Now, is there a lot of that? No, there isn't. And a lot of it is just wacky gags. But I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. When I go into a movie like Toys, I come into it knowing what I'm going to see. I know that I'm going to see goofy Robin Williams for about an hour and a half. I know that. So there's a little bit of that irreverence that I can accept, for me at least.
Yeah, and that was the thing that, I keep learning the more films that I do see, like, I totally understand you going into it with your expectations. I mean, I didn't really know much about this film going into it. I never really, got around it as a kid. But for me, there's two different types of world in a book series that I read, and there's all different worlds, and it's about like kids who fall into them, like Narnia and shit.
Yeah.
These books aren't about Narnia, but it kind of like organizes all of the different worlds in either nonsense or virtue, or nonsense or logic, and virtue and wickedness.
Okay.
And for me, like, I need some logic. I can't just be in a high nonsense situation. Like, I know, like, my favorite kind of world is the one where something makes a little bit of sense, like in a really good example now. Because one of the things that we haven't talked about, that really works is like the visuals are incredible. I mean, the set design's amazing.
Don't
we're
jump
getting
ahead.
there. But what I wanted to say is there's a scene where Robin Williams is talking to Joan Cusack, like right before they go to bed, and she's ready to go to bed, and like, okay, so she's in this really strange, like, duck bed. It's like, have you ever seen those mallards that are on top of your desk, guys? I'm speaking to our listeners because obviously you may not have seen the movie, but it's like one of those mallards, and it's been like split in half, and she's like nestled in the bottom half, and like the top half of the mallard is like on top of like almost near the ceiling. And so, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like a toy maker, nothing looked real. Everything did look like a set piece, though, I will say. Everything looked like a dollhouse. And it looked like they were stuck in a large dollhouse. And I'm sure that was a visual choice on purpose. But again, illogical. I couldn't respond to it.
Well, the movie kind of opens up with them playing with a dollhouse, and it pans out to kind of say, everything's going to be a dollhouse. They're showing us that visually.
So anyway, so this bed, okay, a toy maker would totally maybe make that. That makes sense. But when you go to the wider shot, it's like a box inside of a room.
Yeah.
So, like, she's in the bed's in this giant box, and this giant box is in an even bigger room than we thought the room was originally. Like, visually for me, I was like, this looks like some fake acid trip dream. Like,
it's supposed to be, though.
But there was nothing to ground me, and I needed the grounding in logic. Like, I could go as far as saying, okay, this fantastical toy maker totally could have made that bed, and sure, she's like 25 and she's sleeping in it. That's not weird. I could follow that line of logic, but when you put it in that box, I'm done. I can't connect to it.
Oh, Joan wishes she was 25 in that.
But do you know what I mean? I mean, she's like an adult ass woman.
Lane, you're kind of unpacking what I think is going to be the central argument in the show. Like, we're not there yet, but we will definitely come back to that because I think Brian and I might team up on you on that one. But that's fine. That's kind of the kind of. But speaking of Joan, she is unbearable in this.
Oh, she really is. Like, bless her heart.
Oh, like, come on. I love her in this. Really?
She's kind of grating.
You know what the weirdest thing about Joan Cusack is, and not just this movie, but most of the movies, is that I don't know how I could simultaneously want to give somebody smoochies. Like, I don't mean sexually, but like almost like you would a small child. Like, get them, and then strangle them at the same time. And she somehow does that at the same time to me. In every movie she's in. I'm like, you are so adorable, you fucking annoying ass bitch.
I found her...
Wow, strong thoughts on the Cusack from John.
I thought she was hilarious in this. I thought she was almost a great, like, companion to Robin Williams.
Well, she's grating. She's grating, but I did think she was good in this. It's true.
Do you know what I compare it to? Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey in Batman Forever.
No!
Well, no, let me explain.
No!
Oh, for one reason. Calm down.
No.
Calm down, ho.
No.
Calm down, ho.
In this way, obviously Jim Carrey is going to come in and he's going to be, Daffy Duck on coke. So Tommy Lee Jones thinks, oh, well, I have to go even further over the top to keep up. Okay. And I think that Joan Cusack's like, okay, Robin's going to come in and he's going to be this maniac ball of energy. So I have to be my quirky, weird Joan Cusack up to 11 just to keep up, just to be able to keep up. And I think if it had been a more subtle actor, well, it wouldn't have worked, but just humor me, then Robin Williams, I think she would have toned it down a little bit. But I think she felt she had to compete with Robin.
Well, I think when it's revealed that she's a robot, and here's the thing.
She's a fucking robot, guys.
Well, she's a robot, but it makes sense when, Leslie tells Gwen, Robin Wright, that he wanted a sister, so his father built him one. And if you think about it that way, he was a kid, so that's probably why she maintains that kind of childlike wonderment about her that you can find grating when it's two adults. Because at the time she was probably built to entertain a child.
Okay, so I have a couple of things there. She was built as a 28-year-old woman.
Yes.
To entertain like a 6-year-old.
Yes.
She can eat and she needs to sleep.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't need to sleep.
Well,
she's sleeping because the programming tells her to sleep. She's eating because the programming has convinced her to eat.
And this guy is running a toy factory.
Yes.
After he is able to make hyper intelligent
Yes.
robots. Like,
Yes.
okay.
What did I say? You go into this movie with expectations of the bizarre. If you go into it trying to logically piece certain things together like that, your brain's going to hurt.
Okay.
Okay,
Two
so-
more things. Oh, sorry.
Oh, shit.
Just two more things because I
Okay.
don't want us to get too bogged down.
Next
in the
time,
negative.
next time a shorter list.
Okay. Yeah. Was anybody else bothered by the fact that Robin Williams' father only hired Robin Wright because he eventually wanted his son to fuck her?
That was fucking
that
weird.
part was weird.
That was
Yeah,
weird.
I'll give you that.
But man,
I'll give you
Robin
that.
Wright was so endlessly likable, and I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she just was so. I mean, she's just so pretty. I know it's so lame, but she just looks so good in this, and like, you know, I had no problem like with her costume choices in this. You know, they were fantastical. I thought that was a good element of the nonsense of the world. I thought that was really nice. I thought that her dialogue was really strange. Like, I mean, all the dialogue in this is really
Her
strange.
weird, like, southern accent shit.
I didn't mind the accent. I just thought that the words that came out of her mouth were just words that like would not come out of a person's mouth. But
Like if Jenny had good upbringing.
maybe, but I mean, she was just a very sweet.
went to go work at the toy factory.
Are y'all done? I'm still talking.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I hate you both so much. But no, I just thought she was like a very soothing presence in a movie that like caused me a lot of pain.
Damn, Elaine, just doubling down. And then lastly, this movie's 20 minutes too long.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I'll
It's
give you
too
that.
long.
I'll give you that one.
Because the climaxes for way longer than it should.
Okay, so let's jump to what we're all here for. Why this film, why we think it was overlooked, why we think it had some issues.
Well,
like,
I mean,
and why-
it wasn't entirely overlooked. It was nominated for a couple of Oscars. It didn't win them, but it was nominated for art direction
Costume.
and costume.
Right, but when you have a movie directed by Barry Levinson, starring Robin Williams at his height of his William Naissance,
William Nassau.
you know, and it's a big budgeted movie at Christmas time, and it just crashes and burns like this movie. This should be played like on a loop every year at like the holidays. It should be remembered so fondly, but this is a cult movie at best.
It's hard to get on board because, you know, a lot of the movies that have that cult status, especially if you're going to tie it in with a holiday, John, it has to be with children. This is not a kid's movie. I repeat,
Yes.
No.
not a kid's
Thank
movie.
you,
That's
Elena.
why. It's
No, it's
just
not.
not.
I'll agree with that.
It's just not.
I think that thank you for segueing so brilliantly.
You're welcome.
I think that is one of the biggest problems of this movie is that it doesn't have an audience and it doesn't maintain its tone out throughout any of this movie. And the thing is, when you have Robin Williams, and they had these vague trailers to begin with, and
Right.
you have Robin Williams, and the kids love him. He's the genie. He's he's the wacky, crazy, fun guy. And you go into this movie, and it's violent. It has sex jokes. It has a sex scene.
So much moaning. In
there
this
is a
thing.
lot
Yeah,
of-
there's a lot of moaning.
There's mentions of war and death, and it's like this. There are things in this movie that work for kids.
Also, using children for war. Like, that's a big one.
Yeah.
There are things that work for kids, and there are things that don't. And there are things that work for adults, and there are things that don't. Like, it's not a kids movie or an adult movie.
No.
And I think that word of mouth travels fast.
I was just going to say that, John, because this is actually classified on Wikipedia as a fantasy comedy film.
Yeah.
The fuck is that? Like, that's not a real genre. Like, I mean, in this case, like, it's neither. It's not a fantasy film. It's not a comedy. It intersects in a really odd placement. And I'll tell you what I think got around about this movie too is like, okay, it's nonsensical. It's maybe lyrical. It's possibly expressed, beyond itself, but it doesn't stand for anything higher. And when you have a film that it doesn't have really it has a very simplistic plot, but it's mired in nonsense, you can't care about any of the characters because who knows what happens to them. Like, if something happens to them, like, what are the stakes? You're always asking that, John. Like, what are the stakes? Like, what if something really bad happens to someone in the film? Like, do we know, like, what those rules are? Like, when you start
they're human
breaking those
beings.
rules... Right, but they're not really. Like, it's very strange. They seem very alien. There's like elements of like roboticism to them. Like they're not real people, John. Like you said, we don't enter the real world ever in this film.
To rebut that, sorry. I think they are real people. And I think one of the arcs of this particular film with Leslie is that he comes into this as the comic book but cartoon character, and part of it is his growth to being that human being that can take over the factory. Because that's the movie starts off with his father saying he's too childlike. He doesn't care about responsibilities. He only cares about the toys. He's been trained to be an apprentice in this factory, but he just doesn't take things fucking serious. He doesn't have that grounding, as you say, and that's why he does try to hire Robin Wright as kind of like a as you said, John, as someone to have sex with him,
like pussy bait. But that's gross.
But I think it's also to make him kind of an adult. Misguided as that is.
Agreed.
But I think the thing is that by the end of it, the stakes are honestly his father's legacy. Okay? The legacy that his father built. And it's no longer just about being a goofy fucking idiot half the time. It's being a man that stands for his father's legacy and stands in the way of his uncle who's destroying all of his father's legacy. That's what I think is the arc here. It's not a traditional arc, and it's not an arc that you can just kind of see just on the surface of it. It takes a little bit of digging, but it's there.
Yeah, but like you say that like when there's you say that like Leslie's the only goofy character in a sea of like regularity, but I mean then you have his sister with her like
she's a robot.
Her fucking mayonnaise sandwiches and her like
Lane. What about all of the like people that work at like Yardley Smith and all the other people who are very normal, all the executives those are very normal people.
Yeah, but we're supposed to care about the characters that are the weirdest. And if I'm supposed to care about Robin Williams' character, I felt that distance. Like they put that wall down because he was so bizarre.
But here's the thing. If you're talking about your weird characters here, who are we talking about? We're talking about Robin Williams. We're talking about Joan Cusack. Joan Cusack's a robot.
Well, and Robin Wright's a little bit weird. I mean, she's a little bit strange.
But she's more grounded in reality.
LL Cool J's character is weird. I mean, the camo was hilarious, but it's weird. He like fucking came up out of that couch, Brian. Do not fucking test me on this. It was weird.
I thought it was great.
I mean, it's funny as hell. It was funny as hell, but when shit like that happens, where this guy appears out of nowhere because he's blended into the couch cushions, like
he's a caricature.
But I don't find myself giving a shit about anybody in this movie because everyone is so bizarre.
All right, guys, let's move on. Can you two stop fighting about this?
Whatever. I like fighting. I think it's fun.
Oh, and I don't mean to call you out.
Fisticuffs.
I don't mean to call you out, Lane, but before the rest of our listening audience does, fantasy comedy movie, Princess Bride.
Yes.
A successful one. I mean, I'm just saying.
You said, what is that?
No, I'm saying like it wasn't the kind of fantasy I'm used to. Like you're speaking of the speculative type of fantasy. That's what I'm familiar with. That makes plenty of sense.
Here's the thing.
That's a thing.
I would say, Elaine,
this is not
that this is more in line with art house experimental.
Yes.
Than mainstream.
And like, notice I haven't once said it was bad. I just said I couldn't connect to it for all of the reasons.
And that's what I'm saying.
I can't connect to it.
I think it's a fantasy comedy, but it's more on the spectrum. If we're looking at the spectrum, and the spectrum is more art house experimental and mainstream.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely more towards the art house experimental.
I totally
than
agree.
Mainstream. And that's probably why it didn't make any money.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. With its illogic, structure, you have a harder time getting to emotion, and like that's what I need in a movie. I need to give a shit about one of the characters to want to see it to the end. If I can't emotionally connect, like I shut down.
Well, to that point, a lot of people mention that this film is very surrealist.
Sure.
And we're going to get to a few of the Amazon reviews because in my research for this episode, I was amazed by how many people gave this movie 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that was
and
interesting.
I thought I'll read a couple of those and we can kind of comment on them. But somebody mentioned this movie is more Mulholland Drive than it is Willy Wonka.
Yeah,
and I thought
I could see that. That's pretty astute, actually.
But I mean, there is a narrative structure to this film in the way there is in Mulholland Drive. Right. And I know what they're trying to say. And like, when you go to see a movie, like an American movie, they say that first world is for entertainment, second world is for art, and third world is for revolution. You don't expect to see an art house movie, especially when it's directed by Barry Levinson and stars Robin Williams.
Yeah,
it comes out at Christmas time. Yeah, but this movie is a surrealist piece of art. This movie's almost like poetry.
This
movie's honestly, like jazz.
This movie, I'm reminded of. It's a movie that we watched in grad school. Of The Andalusian Dog by Louis Buñuel.
More commonly
Salvador
known as
Dali.
Le Chien Andalou. It's
Yeah.
more commonly known in the French title.
It reminds me of kind of those absurdist kind of vignettes in that, and that's not even grounded in reality. You have so much, weird vignettes happening in that film, but it reminds me a lot of kind of that absurd nature, But it is definitely more art house. It is not mainstream.
And I don't have a problem with that if that's something that I'm normally, if I'm going for the experience, but there's no emotional catharsis. And two, I mean, like, I'm not sure that this movie completely states or understands the purpose it wants to serve, like the function it wants to have. Like, it has a very simple plot, and it beyond saying like war is bad and be true to yourself and honor your, an important legacy, like, those are all messages I've heard before. Like, this movie doesn't seem to have too much more original to say than that.
I think it under the surface, it's about fathers and sons and really just maturing as an adult. I think that's why the movie's called Toys. Okay?
Yeah,
you think
I can see
about
that.
it, toys are for children. And it's a clash of toys for children and toys for men. People, you could say that war, the tanks and guns and all sorts of shit are toys that military uses, that men use. And this is contrasting that. So I see it as a character development for Robin Williams. It's just not as pronounced as maybe a mainstream film would have it.
Yeah. Well, guys, we skirted around it, but we haven't said it yet. This film is fucking beautiful.
Oh my God.
It is.
Seriously
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the costuming is amazing. Just the details.
sets, yeah.
I mean, you can tell this is really a labor of love because there's just no detail too small. I mean, there is a lot to take in visually. And if that's the kind of movie you're in the mood for, then I feel like you'd have a great time with this. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying it's not what I go to the movies for. And I fail to see the greater points to it for myself.
Interesting little fact. Italian designer, I'm going to butcher this name, Ferdinando Scarfiotti spent a year designing the sets.
So thoughtful.
He spent a year designing the sets, and it took over every single soundstage at Fox Studios.
Wow. Well, it's a lot of space. I believe that for sure.
Well, it's funny to think this came out the same year as Batman Returns, another film that was like incredibly beautiful to look at, but had maybe some
not nearly as beautiful as the first Batman. In my opinion, not nearly as beautiful as the Anton first design.
Yeah. But I mean, it's almost like the movie. I remember somebody telling me one time that they almost wanted to watch Sucker Punch on mute.
Oh,
because
yeah.
the movie is just so unbearable, but you watch on mute just to watch the pretty pictures.
Yeah, of course.
You realize Zack Snyder was a music video director.
Oh, yeah. And you can definitely tell.
And, even if you hate this movie, like, I would suggest watch it again just on mute and just look at the imagery. It's unbelievable.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful.
I don't know how you can hate this movie. I just think Lane, I know you don't like this movie. I just think you have to go into it knowing what you're going to see.
Again, I said several times that I don't hate it. I just can't connect with it. And that shuts me down quick. I mean, I didn't enjoy watching it, and I wanted to. I mean, like, I want to be a snobby, arty film twat and be like, oh my God, the themes in this movie, they're so salient and so perfect for our times in which we live now. Like, I mean, I want to be an asshole. I wanted to like it. But, for me, I just couldn't get past, what I need out of a movie. And, I needed the catharsis more than I thought,
I get you.
But yeah, so guys, let's take a look at our friends over on Amazon.
Oh, God.
And try to get a sense of some of these 10 out of 10 reviews and just kind of take a look at what they had to say and see if we agree or disagree.
Not going to lie, some of the reviews are 5 stars because the DVD came as promised and in perfect condition.
Well, it's weird that everybody always says 5 stars, but these are 10 out of 10s. But anyway, so Rhino Zeitgeist said, it's hard to think of a movie that divides its audience so deeply as Toys does. Even the severest critics grudgingly admit that this is a visually stunning and has perhaps the best soundtrack of the decade. Okay.
Oh, no.
It's clearly
Hans Zimmer did the music.
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's clearly Oscar-worthy in the categories of music and set design. Most people who have seen it agree that Joan Cusack's quirky characterization is wonderful, and the vignettes provided Robin Williams with a springboard for some of his best ad-libs of his career. And the story of whimsical fable of innocence versus corruption is unlikely to give offense as any you can name. Okay. Sorry, that was a strange sentence. So you'd expect the movie's critics to say, I didn't care for it, instead of everyone associated with the movie should be ashamed. When I like something others don't, I hesitate to say that they don't get it. But in this case, Toys, it really is true. It's no coincidence that many visual references of the work of René Magritte keep popping up. Sorry, Renee. Toys is a surrealist movie, and like any other work of surrealism, it has a simple veneer over a more sophisticated message, one that defies explanation and works on the levels of a dream. This movie is more Mulholland Drive than Willy Wonka, as I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, what do you guys think of that 10 out of 10?
I think that he's that guy.
He's that guy.
Where he was like, oh, yes, I'm going to reference this very obscure artist and make it sound like I'm so... No, I'm just kidding. No offense to that guy. I mean, it's what I wanted. Like, it's how I wanted to feel, but I don't. You know, I mean, and again, the visuals cannot be ignored. They're beautiful, but it's just not enough for the movie for me.
Do you know what this reminds me of? Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Beautiful images that create kind of a parable, kind of a fairy tale world with an overly simplistic message.
Yes.
But it's a message that we all need to hear, guised around such a beautiful, as he said, veneer, you know, around beautiful imagery. And I think that Toys is very much similar to that. And Edward Scissorhands is a movie that I enjoy quite a bit. Won't ever be on this show because everybody loves it. But, you know, I think it's very similar in that respect. Like, I don't think that the messages are supposed to be overly complicated. No. I think the way in which they present them is supposed to be overly complicated, like in a good way.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
That's fair. But yeah, I mean, for me, this doesn't hold any nostalgia, so it's a little bit different for me because
that's true too.
It's not like anything that I would have seen as a kid or like enjoyed in my childhood. So, you know, I'm coming at it, you know, cold.
It's funny you should say that because I think, like, as a film snob twat bag that I am,
it's okay, John. I'm apparently a film snob twat bag too.
if I had saw Edward Scissorhands when I was like 22, I would have been like, well, that was vapid and simplistic. I think seeing that movie when I was a little kid, like, really helps me give it a lot of, you know, defense.
It's the member berries.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
You know, and probably this movie too, although, God, it would have been a long time since I had seen it.
I remember watching this on HBO when it came on. Like, remember Saturday night they would have a new movie.
Yeah,
and I remember Toys was the new movie for that, and I watched it.
Well, the How Did This Get Made guys had asked the question: do a lot of people look back fondly on this movie because it was one of those movies that when HBO was younger that they ran all the time and people watched all the time?
Probably.
You know,
maybe.
That probably doesn't hurt anything.
I mean, that definitely it helps.
Yeah. All right, from De Wolfsbane.
De Wolfsbane.
A surprisingly deep film. Toys is a movie easily overlooked and dismissed as childish and nonsensical. Nothing could be further from the truth, though, as this movie has a lot of surprising depth and style. The first point that must be covered is a performance given by Robin Williams as Leslie. Although it is fraught with his almost trademark wackiness, there's an underlying current of a man who is on the edge of coming into his own. The layers of the character he plays are subtly shown, as Leslie is a man who is strong but unsure of his strength and covers that insecurity with comedy and whimsy. Now, there's a couple more paragraphs, but I just want to pause there. I will say that I think Robin sometimes, as we mentioned earlier, was a detriment to his own performance because he was great in this movie when he wasn't, oh, The Last Temptation of Barbie. Oh, you know, like,
yeah. No, there are definitely those moments in the film where, you know, he lets himself get in the way of the character, Leslie. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there are some really good moments, like when he has that last fight with the general in the cityscape and you see him become that strong man who decides that he's not going to let this guy destroy his father's legacy.
Yeah.
That's an awesome moment. But you're absolutely right. There's times when he needs to be reeled back.
Right. It would be like if you did a World War I movie and you cast Andrew Dice Clay, but he's just the Dice Man. He's like in his leather jacket, like smoking, like, look out for mustard gas, Dice Man. Oh, mustard gas. What did some bitch queef? Oh.
Whoa.
No, seriously, that mustard gas is going to kill you. The film is visually striking, a real art department tour de force, and is very much removed from any hint of the past at first glance. Looking deeper into the visuals, however, reveals the film's deeper content of classic surrealist motifs, especially that of dismembered body parts and other parts separated from the whole. Partially assembled dolls, the parts of which come out of the machines that are shaped as further separated body parts, are shown throughout. Joan Cusack, I'm going to say because I can't get her name right, lives in rooms within rooms that seem to be separated from the wholeness of the house, and indeed lives in a paper fold-out dollhouse herself, the reasons for which become quite apparent towards the film's end. So I think what he's saying is that they're extensively telling a story through images.
It's for us film twats.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't say you guys were twats because you guys weren't like up your own asses about it. Like, I'm just saying, like, you know, I think people might pretend to like this movie when they don't actually seem deep.
So, John, should we make our spinoff show called Film Twats?
How boorish.
How boorish.
Okay, you guys weren't twats until just this minute.
Oh, you know it's all in good fun.
We'll bring on our friend Little Debbie.
Oh, that's rough.
Anybody that went to grad school with us will get that one.
Oh, that's rough.
I liked it though.
But this raises a question that I had written down in my notes here, because he just kind of goes on a little bit towards the same thing there. Do you guys think that the audience for this movie was a bit too cynical for the message that we need to keep that innocence in all of us, and that like the toys are really us, man?
No, I think the problem was, as I said, this is a art house experimental film that was being released at Christmas time as a mainstream film. That's the problem.
It's true.
I don't think the messaging is the problem. I think the marketing and audience is the problem. This should have been playing for awards. It should have been playing to make a buck. That's the problem. You know what I mean? This is basically Oscar bait. It's not mainstream film. And the thing that sucks about this is, when was the last time you saw a movie that looked like this?
I mean,
Yeah.
Because usually when something's this visually arresting, it's not in this color palette, right?
Exactly.
We've seen a lot of movies that are very, stark and striking, but they're usually fucking Gotham or, like the darker parts of Edward Scissorhands,
What is that movie? Dark City?
Dark City's
Dark City,
I would
yeah.
say.
Oh, yeah.
But that is also dark as hell. The Crow, but that's also dark
they're all
and
dark.
gloomy.
You don't see this bright color palette
you
a
don't.
lot. You really don't.
And I mean, honestly, I can't even remember another film that had this much attention to set design.
Well, I can give an example, but here's me being an old man yelling at clouds because it's fucking hideous to look at, is Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. But everything is CGI, and it looks disgusting.
Yes.
But there is like a muddiness to its color palette, though. Like, it's not necessarily that bright. There's a lot of it where there's like a little gray and everything.
But I'm not even necessarily talking about the color palette. I'm talking just about the whimsical, almost surreal type of design to the film.
Yeah, it's true.
I can't think of another film besides, as you said, like Edward Scissorhands has a little bit of that in kind of how they, made Suburbia look. But there really isn't another type of film that spent this much time in trying to use film as a visual medium.
Yeah.
To this level. Like, I can't think of another one. Like, even the scenes when they're in the fields and you've got that nice bright blue sky and that nice almost like fluorescent green grass, that amazing art direction. It just works for it.
Yeah.
And you contrast that with scenes with the general and all this other shit, and it's all dark and in shadow, and I haven't seen another movie like that. And that's why I think this is more experimental art house than mainstream. That's I think its biggest problem. How it's marketed.
I agree. But
and a lot of people here are just saying that if it entertained me, I like it. And I thought Robin Williams was hilarious. And his one speech was very funny. So, I mean, there are some people on here who just spit the truth. I was entertained,
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You can go to a movie and just be entertained. I've seen some movies that are god awful. Okay, last week we watched Skyscraper, and 2 weeks ago we watched Skyscraper.
No, so bad.
And that was still terrible. But there have been some movies that I've watched that are pretty bad. Like you would mention to me a couple weeks ago about Blockers.
Yeah.
Okay, we watched part of that, and it was entertaining. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's dumb, but it's just
dumb as
fun.
all hell, but it's dumb fun.
I was surprised at how funny I found it, though, because I thought it was going to be very not progressive and very not feminist, but a lot of my concerns were actually literally echoed in some of the one character's dialogue, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I feel so.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, sometimes you can just go to a movie and just turn
it's just
it off
fine, yeah.
and just watch it as, okay,
and I do think, I will say, everyone should definitely see this and expand their horizons. I'm not sorry I saw it. I hope that's clear.
Oh, yeah. I think people got that.
Well, guys, speaking of film twats, I would like to propose a question.
Oh, God.
Do you think a big reason that this film was ignored as well was because the critics just went to town?
Well, I mean, I read Roger and Ebert's review, and they weren't that bad.
Did you say Roger and Ebert?
Oh, I did. Oh, my God,
Suck
I did.
it, Gene.
Oh, my God.
Suck it.
Siskel and Ebert. Oh, my God, you guys. Oh.
Roger and Ebert.
Woof.
Although there was a point about 97 that he should have been Roger and Ebert because he was a big boy.
Oh, that's so mean. Oh, so mean.
But yeah,
but theirs wasn't that bad. I mean, they actually...
Roger actually liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, right? So, I didn't think it was that horrible. I thought, the critics were the only people that liked it.
No, actually, the critics just... They bored into this movie.
They did.
And
really?
Elaine, you mentioned this is the era of Siskel and Ebert and Gene Shalit, and a lot of these reviewers, people took them very seriously. Now everybody goes, I don't care what the critics say.
Well, that's because anybody with a Twitter handle thinks they're a movie critic now.
Right. But,
kind of like the At Psycho show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, considering we're film critics, suck it. But, I think that since they came down on it in a snobbish way, people are, oh, well, it must not be worth my time. Let's go see Home Alone 2 because he might do his hands on his face again and go, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
want to see the paint cans.
I mean, this was at a time when they did have kind of a sway.
It was a tough release time, too. I think that makes a big difference.
I mean, I got why they did a Christmas release. It makes sense to me. Movies called Toys. Wouldn't you want to go check out a movie called Toys around Christmas time?
Yeah, but then it turns out to not be for fucking kids in any way, and you're like, oh no.
Well, actually, I have it right here, guys. I'm just going to read the last passage from Mr. Ebert. There's a curious residue of dissatisfaction after Toys is over. It opened so well and promised so much that we're confused. Is that all there is? The film seems filled with ideas, but what are they exactly? The production created a wonderful world, but doesn't make its purpose clear. It is impossible.
That's what I said. It doesn't know what it's doing.
It is impossible to fault the performances. Williams seems born to live in this toyland, and Cusack's performance seems more subtly inspired the more you think about it. The production design deserves an Academy Award recognition, but the most fundamental level, Toys is a film that's not quite sure what it's all about, and I really hate bald dudes that make horror movies. I would really like to stick it to those assholes.
No, you're antagonizing Brian, and the main point here is that I was right.
No, that was the last
First
thing
of all,
The main point
back
is that
in
that's
92,
exactly what I
had
said.
a full head of hair. Okay?
That's what
He
I
saw
had
the future.
said.
He saw the future.
Yeah. But
Rotten in hell.
and I think that is the big complaint, and that's what Elaine, as I said, as you mentioned earlier, while we were still at the beginning stage of this episode, that's the big complaint, and I think the big problem people have with it.
You're a genius.
These are all things that I said. That stuff is tough,
You either go for the ride or you don't. Like, I am a huge fan, although sometimes, boy, does he miss, and when he does, he misses hard. But I am a huge fan of David Lynch.
Yeah.
And his films oftentimes don't make a lick of sense. But I know going into this film that I am on a surrealist ride. I am here for more of emotion than I am logic.
Yeah, see, Lynch, honestly, I'm more in the camp that Elaine's in when it comes to toys.
Yeah.
With Lynch, I appreciate him, and there are some movies like I love Blue Velvet, for instance. Love that film, but his other works, I'm just like, what the fuck, half the time, and it's probably because I have to watch it multiple times too. Like to really watch a David Lynch film, you kind of have to watch it at least 2 or 3 times to get what the hell is going on. Or just you give up by the 3rd time. You're just like, fine, whatever. I'm not going to try to look for a narrative plot.
Like I did with Lost Highway?
Yeah, pretty much. But I get that. I think with toys it's a little easier because there is somewhat of a thread of a narrative in it, whether how wacky and goofy it is. It's just a matter of, as you said, sitting down and just saying, okay, we're not going to try to analyze this too much.
No.
But no, I get it. Some people, they have to do that, and that's fine.
So, guys, a major question about this movie. With the little kids at those, like, video game seats, were they killing people?
No, they were training.
Yeah, no.
Oh, so they weren't actually piloting actual
No, they were
it was
training
a simulation.
For it. It was training
Thank
for
God.
that.
I thought they were actually supposed to be like piloting things out in the field and like butchering.
That was that. Here's the thing. It was the general's plan.
Yeah.
The general's plan was to train
I thought he
the
already
children.
implemented it.
No,
Yeah.
he was training the children to really kind of get them prepared for this, and then his plan was going to be to put out the war toys and have children pilot them.
And I think that's a big fault of this movie with its marketing, and especially with this trailer. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to give too much away. Like, if you tell somebody, hey, keep an open mind, this is more like a dream or a fairy tale, and it's more about how you feel, and, take that into consideration going into this, you're going to have a better time watching this movie. But you think it's going to have a narrative structure like the majority of movies that you see, and it's not going to be too off kilter. So don't you think, oh, well, Robin Williams, he's got that goofy hat. It's going to be a little silly, but like Aladdin silly,
Yeah.
Right.
But nobody prepared anybody for going to this movie. I think they feel tricked.
I think they thought it was going to be benign whimsy.
Yeah.
And this movie's a lot of things, but it's not. Its nonsense is not whimsy, and it's not totally benign.
No, I agree. That's why I said the biggest fault that this movie has is it could not figure out who the audience was going to be. They thought they were going to be doing something that was mainstream. They thought, hey, we'll take advantage of Robin Williams at the height of his fame. He's working for kids because of Aladdin. But the problem is that this movie is not a mainstream film. This movie is an art house film. That's ultimately what it is. If this was playing in small art house theaters at the time in Los Angeles and New York, it probably would be fine. It probably would attract people to it. It probably would have won an Oscar because of that,
And not lose costume
And
to
not-
Howard's End.
Hey, no, it lost costume to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I'll be honest with you.
All right, it lost production.
It lost production design to Howard's End.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this. Dracula earned that Oscar, okay?
Agreed.
It earned that Oscar.
It didn't earn it in acting, I'll tell you that much.
Nope.
I am English, dude.
It wasn't nominated for acting.
Nope. For good reason.
Okay? It earned that Oscar for costume.
Although it should have been for Gary Oldman.
But I mean, honestly, I personally believe that if this movie had been treated like an indie darling and more of an art house type film, that it probably would have won production. I really believe that.
It might have. I mean, the marketing was, if it was different.
Because if you think about it, how many of these art house type films, these indie darlings that you see, they're not, I think they're treated by critics with somewhat kid gloves because they're not looking at it as this is a mainstream film.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's the thing here. I think it could not figure out and it missed the mark on who the audience was.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. So yeah, we're probably about wrapping up here. But Brian, I'm going to challenge you.
Oh God,
I'm going to challenge you, bro.
Here we go.
If you dig way back into our archives,
Oh shit.
I'm talking going all the way back to episode 1.
Whoa.
You had mentioned that your problem with Batman Returns
Yeah.
was that it was certainly beautiful, but didn't make much sense.
Oh, you fucking asshole.
I mean, hey, I'm a hypocrite, and I'm sure somebody could call me out every fucking episode. But I'm just curious why it is considering same year why it works for toys but not Batman Returns.
Okay, you want to know why? You want
Yes.
to know why? Okay, I will tell you why here. Batman is more of an established narrative character with preconceptions of how that world works. Okay? So, for instance, I always bring up the point, and I brought this up in episode 1. I think that was episode 1.
Episode
right?
1, yeah.
Yeah.
I brought
The
up how I did not understand why Batman, who had made all of his technology, who is rich as all fucking hell, why he had to use a mirror system at Wayne Manor to
You cannot get over those mirrors.
I cannot. To project the bat signal to his library, and how he always seems to be just hanging out in the library deep in thought. And I kept saying to myself, like, what if Batman goes and takes a shit?
Oh, he's
What
got
if
one
he
in there.
decides? What if he decides? Hey, you know what? It's 11 o'clock at night, and you know what? The signal hasn't gone out yet, so I'm gonna go take a shit. You know, in
A
one
bat
of my
shit.
in one of yeah, a bat
Gonna
shit.
go take a guano.
I'm gonna take a guano. Oh, that's a good one.
You guys are welcome.
I'm gonna go take a guano in the one of my 300 bathrooms that I have in Wayne Manor. And it never made sense to me. I'm like, you're telling me that the programming in Wayne Manor seems to always know to shine that signal in that one room? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So for me, that kind of holds true, because the narrative preconceptions of that world is that Batman should have the technology to be able to be anywhere and be notified of it.
but the simplest-
toys.
Yes.
I'm not done yet.
Okay. Not bad.
Toys
Oh my.
has no rules. It has no grounding characters. There's no narrative preconceptions regarding toys. So you're not going into it saying, well, I've read all of the 70 years of comics that Batman is included in, and know that doesn't make any sense. Whereas toys is completely virgin territory. It's completely open. The world you can accept that because you're not going into it with any preconceptions. And that's why I say Batman Returns, I can't buy that, but toys I can. Because I'm buying into the world the minute I turn it on. Whereas Batman Returns, I have a lot of baggage associated with it to begin with.
Fair.
That's a very
Boom.
decent argument.
Yeah, it's a
Very
good
fair.
argument. I liked it.
And I think people are going to think I'm crazy for saying this, and feel free to debate me on Twitter. I think not only is Batman Returns great, it might be the best Batman movie.
No.
Oh, now see, like,
No.
we're winding
No.
up
No.
the episode.
No.
We're like wrapping it up, and like, you always do this right before bedtime. You get them all upset.
It's a good movie, but it's not the best.
All right.
We
So
will discuss this on another time, gentlemen.
really that awful? We'll go around the table. I will start. I will say, I'll go back to our episode on Cable Guy. I'm a starch defender of that. I would say not only is it really not that awful, it's fantastic. I will say that this film is far from great, but it is not really that awful.
I would say that this movie is worth seeing, and anything that's worth seeing can't be really that awful.
I will say that this movie has flaws. It's not awful as a film.
It's not really.
It's not really that awful. Its marketing and its audience was that awful. Who they were targeting this film to, that's the problem. As I said, if they targeted this movie to art houses, if they targeted this movie as an indie, this movie would be fine. I honestly, and to couple that, if this was that, there's no way it would have been able to afford the $50 million budget that it has. So there's that.
Cop and a half. Now that's really that awful.
Oh my.
Or Cops and Robertsons.
Yeah,
That's really bad.
That's a gem.
It is. It is. Okay, cool. It is a good episode. Really good episode.
We don't mind tooting our own horns.
Good talk,
Yeah,
y'all.
good talk. So, Lane, where can they find you at on the Twitters?
I can be found at LA_Croft.
John?
Talk to me about Batman at the Unreal J Wolves.
And I can be found at Film Twat. No, that's
Twat.
at Brian Clinton, house from the Psycho Show. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epiccastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away, you want to talk to us and tell us how John and I are giant film twats and Lane is not, you can contact us.
What do you think of toys? Tell us.
Yeah, tell us that. You contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and iTunes and catch a new episode available every other Sunday.
Who wants an elitist snack? Let's grab a Little Debbie.
Perfection.
Epicast.